if there's an election and I say that I refuse to take part in this thing, and not only do I refuse to take part in it, I now tell my constituency that they need to go and block that election from happening. They need to violently stop the election from happening. And then they carry out those instructions. They attack people who voted. They cut off people's, the little finger with the ink mark that shows you voted. They were cutting off people's little fingers. Yes,
there's evidence
it's in the documentary.
Really?
Yes.
Why not get sworn in a stadium full of people, full of your supporters? Why did you have to lock it in?
From the Tanzanian government's point of view, what I would imagine is the case is that they saw what happened as an attempted coup. As an attempted strike against the state.
So that's your point. This was an attempted coup.
That's basically what it was. It was an attempted color revolution.
Now, Tanzania documentary, the controversial Tanzania documentary, what happened on October 29th.
Yep.
I read the synopsis, David, and I didn't like it. I didn't.
Many people didn't.
Because when it happened, we were getting a lot of information. What you're basically saying is the information was exaggerated. The violence was there, but it wasn't as intense as we, as these media publications were pushing it on us. That's what you're saying.
I'm saying that. I'm also saying that a lot of the information was also intentionally skewed in such a way as to make you believe a certain narrative. So, I was having this conversation with the audience in Dar es Salaam, and the audience there was quite surprised to find out, for example, that the world outside of Tanzania did not know or was not informed that the reason why the opposition didn't take part in the election was not because they were banned from taking part in the election, which is what all the CNNs of this world said, and DWs and the Al Jazeera and whatnot, but that the opposition refused to take part in the elections, claiming that unless a new constitution was written, they will not take part in the elections. And that was the campaign they called No Reforms, No Election. That's a very important distinction to make, that if there's an election and I say that I refuse to take part in this thing, and not only do I refuse to take part in it, I now tell my constituency that they need to go and block that election from happening. They need to violently stop the election from happening. And then they carry out those instructions. They attack people who voted. They cut off people's, the little finger with the ink mark that shows you voted. They were cutting off people's little fingers. Yes,
there's evidence
it's in the documentary.
Really?
Yes. If that was happening, so based on my agitation as the opposition entity that refused to take part in these elections, we violently scuppered the election. And then the states responded with even deadlier force. And then somehow, the people who are reporting the story completely failed to mention the entire first half of what I just said. And all they report is the state's response. Someone is lying to you.
Okay, now, why did Samia switch off the internet? Like, if she was confident that, I'm winning this. So there's nothing to hide, really. So why did she switch off the...
Again, it wasn't about winning, because as you yourself have just said, CCM was always going to win the election. There was never any question about that. The issue was that this violence was spreading, and this violence was being orchestrated through a network of online influencers and amplifiers. And the Tanzanian government decided that the way to shut it down is to stop people from having that informational access to each other via the internet. So they switched off the internet. That was part of, some would say that response is heavy-handed, is draconian. But are you really going to tell a government how to react when someone literally tries to, in my opinion, conduct a coup under their nose? Because that's essentially what this was. You have every right to be in political opposition. You have every right to say you don't want this government. You have every right to campaign against the government and tell people to vote for you or to support you, to oust the government. What you don't have a right to is to then tell these young and impressionable people who are hanging on your every word that you are now the only legitimate entity that they should listen to, that the state no longer has any legitimacy, and that being the case, you are justified to go out and carry out any random act of violence that you see fit. to the point where people were getting caught trying to burn down the harbor, trying to burn down the train station, the train line. Who does that benefit? Why are you trying to burn down public infrastructure? Like, you're allowed to want to get rid of a government, right? But why are you trying to burn down public infrastructure? Who does that serve? To whose benefit is it if you burn down a country's infrastructure, if you kill people for going out to vote, or you maim them for going out to vote, because you say that there shouldn't have been an election. There should be no election unless something you asked for is given to you. What right do you have to make that demand? And somehow the world was not given all this information. What the world was told was that the incumbent party banned the opposition from taking part in the election. They gave themselves 96% of the votes that they announced, and then they took down the internet so people couldn't complain. And then people reacted to this. People went out onto the streets, and then they started killing them. They killed 20,000 people, which is a total fabrication. That's not what happened at all.
But people died, right?
Of course people died. Of course people
Innocent
will
people
die.
died.
Innocence is a very strong word in that context. You can be innocent in the sense that you were not knowingly trying
You're following the crowd.
Yes. So in that sense, you were innocent. But if the end goal of what you were involved in was to basically paralyze a state, then how innocent are you really? Because this is covered quite extensively in the documentary, that voting started at 8 in the morning. Voting wasn't supposed to conclude until 4 p.m. in the evening. By 10 a.m., 2 hours after voting started, this whole thing had gone up in flames. So what exactly were they protesting about? If it was an organic, spontaneous protest against the government, what are they protesting about 2 hours after voting began? A result has not been announced. The voting hasn't even concluded. And they're in the streets cutting off people's fingers. Why?
Because, we had a lot of stuff. So are you saying that Sulu is popular, is somewhat more popular than we Kenyans or we outsiders from Tanzania think?
I think popularity is completely beside the point. Yeah. I think CCM was always going to win the election regardless. I think
that's what you think?
The opposition, this is also covered in the documentary, that what you think of as an opposition in Tanzania is not really an opposition in the conventional sense that some people came together and decided they want an alternative. They have an alternative national vision and they formed a political party. That's not what Chadema is. This is an opposition which was basically put together by Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, the German political foundation, DAS. They basically literally put this thing together, funded the construction of like buildings and stuff. They literally put together an opposition in someone else's country and continue to fund it. So essentially what you are referring to as an opposition party is basically an insertion of a foreign government, first of all.
But is opposition popular in Tanzania? Do they, because again,
if I talk about popularity in 2020, and this is also covered in the documentary, that from 1995 to date, CCM has won every election, and the lowest vote share it has had, which I think was 2015, John Magufuli's first election, was 58%. That's the lowest vote share it has had. In 2020, its vote share was 81%. 82%.
Magufuli was popular. I like Magufuli.
So
I really did.
How popular is this opposition that has never won an election before, that has never come close to winning an election in the history since Tanzania introduced multi-party electoral democracy in 1985? This opposition has never come close to winning. And then all of a sudden, in 2025, you start hearing no reform, no election, and then a bunch of foreign actors are involved in this thing. And then the so-called influencers, your Maria Sarungis and the likes, start acting as if there is there's a genocide going on in Tanzania or something, and they need to, the urgency. You remember when she used to host those spaces the years preceding the election, you would think, what the hell is going on in that country? And then it turns out all of this was funded activity.
By who?
The Ford Foundation, which is yet another...
The Ford Foundation. I've heard of them.
Yeah. This is covered extensively in the documentary. You're going to see all of this today. I'll see. Yeah. If you haven't watched it, by the time this video goes up, that documentary will be up on YouTube.
Oh, by the way, is it being uploaded on YouTube?
It's already been uploaded. So, but it's set to premiere tonight.
Oh, good.
So immediately the premiere here in Nairobi ends, It premieres on YouTube. So just go to the Spearhead YouTube channel. It's called The African Spearhead, and you'll find it there.
Okay, 2 more questions. One, why did Sulu get sworn in a military base? Why, if everything is okay, right? And
Nothing was okay.
Why not get sworn in a stadium full of people, full of your supporters? Why did you have to lock it? And
from the Tanzanian government's point of view, what I would imagine is the case is that they saw what happened as an attempted coup, as an attempted strike against the state.
So that's your point. This was an attempted coup.
That's basically what it was. It was an attempted color revolution.
But I mean, she has the army. Unless there's somebody in the army who was infiltrated.
So you might recall this so-called Captain Tesha. If you recall that episode, a guy who claimed to be, I think, a lieutenant or a major in the army.
Yeah, I remember.
Who came out with his army uniform and was calling on president to resign and all of that stuff. Okay. So clearly there was infiltration as well.
I get you. Okay, one more thing. Again, her language is extremely violent, especially to Gen Zs. That's what she said. Gen Zs. She has said multiple times, even when Ruto went to Tanzania the other day, she said, Ruto, chapam kwaju. That means let's teach these Gen Zs a lesson. Let's use force on them whenever they decide to protest or to whatever, to go against us.
Again,
so because Kenyans are looking at it and they're like, David, man, do you know what Sulu said about Gen Zs? She has always said, we will teach you Gen Zs a lesson.
Again, I understand and sympathize with that, but again, that's completely beside the point. Samia Hassan may not be good. She's probably not a good person. You probably don't rise to that position of power without, habitually people over in some way, shape, or form. So she may not be a good person. But you don't need to be a good person to be an effective leader, first of all. Tanzania does, or the Africa doesn't necessarily need good people. It needs good leadership. Those are two completely different things.
Interesting.
Right? And more importantly, in this context where she's saying we'll teach the Gen Zs a lesson. Yes, that sounds violent. That sounds militaristic.
Yes.
In what context is she saying it? With what mental reference is she saying that? From her point of view, which I agree was expressed very crudely, and she shouldn't have said that in public. Even if she's thinking it, she shouldn't say it. But from her point of view, she's looking at it as, these people don't know a thing about the country that they live in. They don't understand the powers that are at play here. They don't understand what is at stake and what is going on. And they are lending themselves to be used as tools of someone else's foreign policy. So it's either we let it happen and they basically derail their own country the way we did in 2015 in Nigeria, because something similar happened, and we basically derailed our own, and we have never recovered. And that's how come Nigeria is in a mess that it's in now. So it's either we let it happen in the name of being liberal and letting young people express themselves and have freedom, or we become iron-fisted and we drag them kicking and screaming toward our national goals and objectives. And from her point of view, she has probably decided that maybe for whatever reason, these people they're not going to be reasoned with. So the only way to accomplish this will be through the use of force.
Unfortunately.
And look, let me say this very, very openly. The idea that just by virtue of being a young African, that you are somehow entitled to be treated with a certain level of, like, how do I put it now? Liberalism and freedom and respect. That's an idea that is dependent on you also understanding your own place in the world and what your country should be accomplishing in the world and how it's going to get there.
Yeah.
Right? There are a lot of Africans who don't understand any of the issues going on in Africa. All they know is somebody started making noise. Oh, the president's a tyrant and this, and then they just jump on the bandwagon. And then wherever the bandwagon is going, they don't even know. They don't care. It's just manufactured hype. And the young people of the country are used as tools and weaponized against their own well-being. I can say this for certain because I have lived through this in Nigeria. This is exactly what happened in Nigeria. The young people of the country were stirred up into a frenzy. You would have thought that I don't know. There was some kind of like Gaza genocide going on in Nigeria. The way all of us hated Goodluck Jonathan during that period. We were stirred up. This guy has to go. Blah 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 blah. Okay, we eventually accomplished what we were trying to do, right? We got him to leave. And what was the end result? Because Nigeria, as of 2015, was the third fastest growing economy in the world, was number one economy in Africa, was part of the Minsk bloc, Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Turkey. It was on track to become Africa's first $1 trillion economy by 2024. Where is Nigeria today?
Yeah. Well, so you're saying that people were misled
Completely.
by the opposition.
Completely.
They don't know who the opposition is serving.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. And I'm also saying
But you're also saying that the government isn't good as well, right?
I'm also saying that the government, well, the government is generally speaking heading in the right direction, but doesn't necessarily know how to pass this information across.
So they rather use force. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Very unfortunate.
So two things can be right at the same time.
Yes. To any young African who wants to understand their place in the world and wants to understand how they got from A to B, where you come from, what context you exist in, where you are going as an individual, where your country is going. Make it a habit to be intellectually curious. Make it a habit to ask questions. Make it a habit to use Google. Just Google stuff. Just make it a habit, habitually, just Google stuff. Whenever you come across something, try and find out what information you can find out about it. I'm making specific reference to this phenomenon of, contrived color revolutions and people trying to use young Africans as the tools fashioned against themselves, because this is absolutely a thing. This is a thing that is happening. Now, Africa does need youth-led revolutions, absolutely 100%. I myself am advocating for one in Nigeria because I think that's the only way Nigeria has any way forward. But the people who, whether you like it or not, are your enemies in the world, and you do have enemies in the world, whether you acknowledge, whether you choose to acknowledge that or not, you might not have enemies, but enemies have you. You didn't choose it. It is what it is. You sit down on top of the world's most important resources. That makes you a target. Now, the people who are your enemies also understand that you need those revolutions, and they are willing to use the language and the mechanics and the optics of revolution to mislead you. So before jumping into any revolution, make sure that you are the one controlling it. That's it. Make sure that it's not one Ford Foundation or one Omidyar Network or one National Endowment for Democracy or some other foreign government cutout that is making your decisions for you. It's very important that if you want to have any chance of surviving in the world and maintaining sovereignty, always ask questions. Always find out who is behind anything. Always maintain curiosity. That is one of the most important survival skills for the 21st century. I think I'll leave it there.